Retro Hangover is supported via Patreon by listeners like you. We would especially like to thank patrons Lyle McCarnes, Tony G, Tom the Superhero, Stud Still Smash the Milkman, Raging Demon, Mast Keaton, Lucas from Game Over Hell, Ozzy Garcia, JC, Megan Caruso, Rick Firestone, Dave Jackson, Jenny E, Retro Overdrive, Soha the Emperor, Storm Beagle, Matt aka Stormageddon, Pete Ross and Van Fernal from Super Garbage Day, Randall Quiggle, Keith Gasper, the Retro Vixen, Eric Guess, Nomad from the Retro Wildlands podcast, Ash Events, Alan Bingham, Mike the Rep from Backbreaker Gaming, Ryan Player One, Alt, Low5 Alex, Renner Dreaming, Omi, Makeshift Money, and Sega Boy 7. Your continued engagement and generous donations are deeply appreciated.
Open your ears and crack some beers. You are listening to the most recent episode of Retro Hangover.
And hello, retro and classic gamers. Welcome to the podcast where we psionically syncing psychos cycling psilocybin. This is Retro Hangover. I am your co-host, Chris Copleen, with special guest, the real Dave Jackson from Tales from the Backlog. And, as always, your host, Shane Dream Dick Fluff Dragon Selter.
I like the implication is that it was not the fake Dave Jackson. You know, it's like we didn't want the Temu Dave Jackson here with us.
Well, we've had Temu Dave Jackson. He'd have a 100% tariff on him.
Ooh, topical.
Woof. Are you sure it's just 100%?
Actually,
I don't know. It's going to age like milk no matter what. So
I think right now it's like 125 or something stupid.
Oh,
It just changed during the making of that joke too.
Yeah,
it did. Now it's 350%.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Pray do not alter the deal further.
No, of course not. All right. Well, welcome back to the show, Dave. It's nice to have you.
Yeah.
My memory is full of holes. I can't remember the last episode you were on, but I know it was great.
Yeah.
What was it?
That's a good question. Was it System Shock? System Shock 2?
I think so, yeah.
I think it was.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we only picked good shit for me to come on here. Metal Gear Solid and KOTOR and System Shock 2 and Psychonauts, right? It's great to be back, guys.
Do you want to be back for the next episode?
Yes, I can't wait to see what it is.
No, you don't. We have a great episode next time too. But
oh, I know what that is. Yeah, no, you sold me before recording on it with the inspirations and everything like that. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. It's going to be Daikatana, everybody. Just because I don't like teasing, but yeah, if you want to listen to an episode about Daikatana, swing by. Dave is not going to be there. He thanked me already. You don't have to worry about that. It's nice to have you back on the show. Shane, how are you doing? It's nice to have you back on your own show as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate being allowed to come back. It's a real honor.
I've tried and I failed.
You know, it's perseverance, man. Just keep at it. One of these days.
Okay.
It'll work. But for right now, I'm still here and doing all right, all things considered. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are not talking about other games other than the one that you probably opened up on your podcast app, which is Psychonauts. But before we get into the game du jour, we are going to be talking about what games we have been playing lately. And as is tradition, we start with our guest. So Dave, what games have you been playing lately?
I've got two main ones. Actually three. I've been playing Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii, which still takes the cake for best video game title. Video game titles got out of control with all the colons and the trying to set up brands and series names and shit. Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii is the new Yakuza game that I've been playing. It's not great. It's okay if you like Yakuza games, if you like the characters and the sense of humor. It's cool. It's not a great action game. It's not a great pirate game. The story is not great, but it's like to be in the world of Yakuza. If you are going to play that game, that means you're probably already in on the series and everything that goes with it. And I am. So I'm having a good time with it, although objectively it's I think one of the worst in the series. But it's a spin-off game about a character who's never starred in his own game before. And it's called Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. So what do you really expect out of it? So I've been playing that. I have been playing through Dragon Quest V on my DS, which I have been having a really good time with. It has completely turned me around on the idea of Dragon Quest from where I was before playing this, which was, a place where I wasn't enjoying it a whole hell of a lot. And I'm in. So everyone can put their pitchforks down. I'm in. I get it. I will just give a little tease that in the coming months, Chris will be joining me on my show for the whole story about how I got back into Dragon Quest and then talking about what I think is a really, really good game. So there's that. And then the last one, I just beat this game, but it's new and I think it's really cool. So I want to shout it out. It's called South of Midnight. From Compulsion Games. They made We Happy Few, I think was their previous game. And This is a real throwback to an older style of like linear action platforming, think Uncharted, climbing around, platforming, combat arenas, stuff like that. But instead of Nathan Drake and his exploits, you play as a teenager in the South, and it's all about this Southern Gothic fantasy, and the whole world is built around folklore come to life, and it's in this like beautiful stop motion animation. If you liked Big Fish, for example, and like the tall tales throughout that movie and stuff, this game is full of that too, where it's like folklore come to life, and you're kind of working through the difficulties of various people living out there. So it's just a really, really beautiful, cool game. The story was fun. The music's fantastic. That's a new game I just wrapped up. It's on Game Pass at the time of us talking here, and it was really cool. So South of Midnight.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people in our community, in our circle, talk about it, and they say they like it. I've heard the combat is like it's low point, but everything else kind of makes up for it, is what I've seen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't play new games anymore because I'm just so mired in my own crap. So we'll see if I ever find my way there. By the way, if it has a lot of Southern folklore, does Florida Man make an appearance?
Not really. No, there's a couple of characters that are like maybe a little reminiscent of a Florida Man type, but no, not the modern cryptid known as Florida Man.
Damn. Missed opportunity. For myself, I have been playing on stream, if you've been watching our stream, some Dragon Quest V after my game save got erased on my Super Nintendo, which was crushing because, as Dave mentioned, I'm looking forward to going on Tales from the Backlog to talk about it. I'm going to get my memory refreshed. That was a brutal blow. So I've started over and started playing the PS2 version, which looks a lot better than I thought it was going to look. Sounds fantastic. And plays just like the Super Nintendo version does. I mean, there's really no noticeable difference. I think you get more party members, but I'm not at that point yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a good time with it. I love that game. If you've heard me talk about it on King of Games 92, you probably already know that. If not, you can go back and listen to that. I'm sure we'll cover it sometime in the future as well. I'll make Shane play it. I'm making everyone else play it. Shane, it'll be your turn at some point. I've also been playing the game for next show, which is Daikatana. I've been playing it on PC. I will save my words because I will give everything away if I start talking about it. I am looking forward to talking about it, though. John Romero. I don't want to keep using this. I've been overusing the John Romero make you his bitch joke too much. I'll have to use that more. I'll definitely be using that in 2 weeks' time, though, listener. Trust me. It's going to get completely overdone. But other than that, Persona 4 Golden, I've started as well. So there you go, patrons. We are working on it. We
happening.
are working our way through. It's happening. We are getting the experience. But yeah, everything for the show right now, really nothing outside of that is kind of par for the course has been for the past couple months. But I feel if I can get through some Daikatana a little early, I might be able to have some gaming time to myself. So I look forward to that. How about yourself, Shane?
Yeah, pretty much the same, honestly. Any real gaming time that I have right now is more or less dedicated to things for the show. So specifically, I am working my way through Persona 4 Golden, and I just started a run through Daikatana this morning. So that's really it. I have things that I want to say about that game, but I won't. I'm gonna wait because we got to do it for the content. But
yeah,
it'll be, I think it'll be a good conversation.
I think so. All right, so now it is time to get into the actual game that we want to talk about today, and that is Psychonauts, a game that came out for the Xbox and PlayStation 2, developed by Double Fine and published by Majesco. That's wild. But hey, Shane.
Yeah.
How about you give us the brief history that we so eloquently make for our listeners?
What happens when a team renowned for crafting some of the most acclaimed point-and-click adventures decides to venture into a new genre? Well, the answer is Psychonauts, the debut title from Double Fine Productions. Our story begins in 2000 when Tim Schafer and several former LucasArts colleagues founded Double Fine after LucasArts shifted away from their point-and-click games. Naturally, Double Fine's first project would be something different, a 3D platformer and collectathon. The conceptual roots of Psychonauts actually trace back to 1995, when Schafer imagined a game inspired by a deleted scene from Full Throttle, in which the protagonist experiences a psychedelic episode. While this idea was initially set aside, it eventually became the foundation for Psychonauts when official development began in 2001. Early on, the team faced several challenges, including an initial office location in a less than ideal part of San Francisco, which necessitated a move, and creative tensions between level designers and artists over the game's overall direction. At one point, Schafer had to completely overhaul the game's design in order to keep the project on track. The publishing journey was equally turbulent. Psychonauts was originally set to be published by Microsoft for the Xbox, but after internal changes at Microsoft and the departure of Ed Fries, the company withdrew from the deal in 2004. This forced Double Fine to seek alternative funding, including support from Maxis's Will Wright, before ultimately securing a publishing agreement with Majesco Entertainment later that year. Majesco's request for a PlayStation 2 port further stretched Double Fine's already thin resources, leading to a period of intense development crunch. Psychonauts launched in North America for Xbox and PC on April 19, 2005, with the PlayStation 2 version following on June 21st. European players received all versions on February 10th of the following year. The game was met with critical acclaim, earning an aggregate score of 88 on Metacritic for the Xbox version, with reviewers praising its creative dialogue and inventive level design. It garnered numerous awards and quickly developed a cult following, though initial sales were modest, around 400,000 copies, according to Schafer. After Double Fine reacquired the distribution rights in 2011 and re-released the game on digital platforms, sales surged, eventually reaching nearly 1.7 million copies by 2015. Since its release, Psychonauts has been celebrated as a hidden gem and has maintained a passionate fan base, ultimately leading to the release of a long-awaited sequel in 2021. And that is your brief history of Psychonauts.
All right, thank you, Shane. I think the one thing that stuck out for me here was that this was Double Fine's debut title.
Yeah,
I did not know that.
it makes
sense.
Pretty strong introduction, if I do say so myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell they started with an idea, right? Like, we'll get into what this game is, but for a debut title, this is one hell of a creative project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll get into it more later in the gameplay, but like it makes sense that this is their debut title, especially knowing where they would go later and that what they would make. By no means am I saying it's a bad game, but you can tell it's a first effort because there's a lot of things happening that it feels. Yeah, I'll talk about it in the gameplay. I'll kind of put a pin in that. But yeah, I mean, it's impressive what they were able to do and the acclaim they got and the just how many people love this game years later, like on an initial effort. Always kind of blows my mind. Also surprised Majesco published it. The publisher that released Game Gears.
Oh,
In the later part of that system's life. They have an interesting history. I would have to go back and look up Majesco sometime. They're strange. Nothing bad, I don't think, but they're just strange. Anything else that caught your attention with the brief history here for either of you?
well, it's just a common thing with all Double Fine stuff, but especially with the Psychonauts games. These games very nearly didn't get made at all. There's we had in the brief history there, part of the development history for Psychonauts is really hard for them to get the game made. I'm pretty sure Majesco came in like at the last second to provide publishing support for it. Otherwise, it wouldn't have come out. They would have just had to can the project because they ran out of money. And then Psychonauts 2, like there's that really, really long documentary series about how difficult and impossible getting that game made was. It's kind of a miracle that both of these games actually exist and people really love them. So we're glad that they were able to actually get them out with all the help that they got.
That's kind of Double Fine's history too. And then you kind of already said that, like a lot of their games are small miracles that they come out and then they come out and the people who play them love them. They just don't usually sell enough to keep up with their budget until they started. And was it Broken Age on Kickstarter that just kind of blew the doors off and really solidified them as a major developer in the eyes of the more mainstream gamer, made them like more recognized. Because I remember like Tim Schafer was getting awards in 2015 for some games when we started the podcast 10 years ago now. Like he became notable in more of the gaming sphere, but at this point, not really. I mean, LucasArts, when we talked about Day of the Tentacle, was that they said that was a massively successful game for them and it was sold 60,000 copies. So that's kind of the arena they were coming out of. But yeah, I mean, another thing that really interested me was that Will Wright essentially floated a loan to them. I think he did it through like some weird means, like unorthodox means, backdooring, because EA wasn't going to let him fund another company's game. So I think he either had to do it himself or he had to do it through some sort of side account to make sure they got the money. Yeah, because Microsoft just bailed on him. And I think Schafer even said that he would port it to the 360 and Microsoft was still like, nah, we ain't interested. And just left him there. So of course, yeah, you're right. Majesco came in last minute, said, oh yeah, we want to port on the PS2 as well. So get cracking.
They were like, yeah, we could do that. Sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what are you going to say? No, you're trying to, this is something you've been working so hard on. Of course, you're going to do whatever you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that kind of shows in the ending sequence. Again, another pin in it.
We'll get there.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into personal experiences. Kind of off mic. I've talked to Dave a little bit. So interestingly, I don't think you have the biggest story for this. So I'm going to hold it off for Shane. I'll go first because I think mine is pretty minuscule as well. I've heard about it. I heard a lot of people talk about it. I never played it. It came out 2005, which definitely would not have been the best time for me to pick up this game. I was deep into RPGs. I think I had just gotten my own TV, but I had not had one for a year prior to that. So when I got a PS2, I think like the first game I got was East 6 and Shadow Hearts Covenant, not Psychonauts, not those games. I want an RPG, damn it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my first opportunity playing it, even though I've had some version of it one way or another on like PC or whatever. And just this is the first time I've gotten to it. So happy to talk about it. Happy to have played it. How about yourself, Dave?
Yeah, this is my first time playing it too. And back in 2005, I was gaming primarily on Xbox and also Game Boy Advance, I think. Those are probably my two main systems. But Xbox was like my Morrowind and the yearly Madden installment machine. By 2005, that was all I was playing was Madden and Morrowind. So a cult it couldn't have been a cult classic yet, but like a kind of under the radar creative platformer, not happening for me in 2005. I was super basic. No. And then I was playing whatever on Game Boy Advance, but this is my first time playing it. And I had not heard of this game until I started my podcast and like just started talking with people more, because none of my friends played this and nobody was talking about it in college after that. So it just kind of like cult classic, I guess. The people who played it really liked it, but those people were not around me. My first time playing it. Chris, what version did you play, by the way?
I played Game Pass on PC.
Okay, yeah, that's what I did too.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on Game Pass on the Xbox. I'm not sure.
I think it is. Maybe. I think they are, yeah.
Also, in 2005, I was going to midnight releases for NCAA, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
for the football part.
That was prime midnight release season. Yeah.
Man, I miss those days.
Mm-hmm.
All right, how about yourself, Shane?
Yeah, I had to go back and like look at because I've had Steam since the birth of Steam. So fortunately I can go back in time and look at this shit. But like the last time I played Psychonauts was 2012. So that was the last and first time that I've played it. So I didn't play it like on release because I mean, let's be honest, the year was 2005. We were 1 year into the release of World of Warcraft, and if you think I was playing anything other than that, you are sorely mistaken. So there was a very large block of time in like the mid-aughts where I don't think I played anything except WoW. It was like a black hole for quite a long time. So no, I didn't play it on release or anything. So I didn't come around to it for another, like 6-7 years, something like that. I'd always heard good things. I was, I guess, friends with some of the people that are kind of into that kind of eccentric, esoteric bullshit. And so I was kind of aware that it existed and that they were into it. But I had never gotten around to it. And I mean, I'm probably going to bring this up again once we get later into it. But I mean, one of the big selling points for me, and this will probably, contextualize things pretty well for people who don't already kind of know where I came from. One of the big selling points for me was the fact that Raz is voiced by the same person that voices Invader Zim. So if that gives you any idea.
Yes, that was a little tidbit I found that was awesome. I like how you say how you had friends that are into esoteric bullshit while I was talking about my PS2 playing Ys 6 in 2005.
Well, I mean, that's your obscure weeb shit. That's a whole different category.
You're not wrong. Let's get into the story here. I looked up the manual because we've been doing that for a story in the Xbox manual. It doesn't have one. It kind of tells you what's going on, but it doesn't really give you a backstory about why you should be playing Psychonauts. But I will try to set the stage the best I can, i.e. horribly. And I'm sure that Dave and Shane will correct me where I am wrong. So you play as a young boy named Raz, or for the full name, Rasputin. And you are at a summer camp for Psy cadets as part of the Psychonaut program. Especially, it's like Professor Xavier's summer camp for gifted youngsters, more or less. And you're going there and you're learning how to do Psychonaut stuff. And of course, you are, as Raz, you have a little bit better powers than the other kids. And so you're getting more advanced training. And then hijinks ensues and bad things start happening, and you as Raz need to go fix that. That's pretty much the long and the short of it. Did I miss anything important?
I mean, you missed a lot. I don't know if important is relevant, but I mean, well, for one, I mean, he didn't just go. It's not like, he was just dropped off at summer camp and they were like, have a good time, honey. He ran away from his circus family.
Yeah.
To go become a psychonaut. I feel like that's an important piece of lore. You gotta include that.
Details. I mean, I guess this is the part we're going to get into it. Dave, what'd you think of, let's get into the plot, writing, story, everything here. By the way, spoilers for Psychonauts coming up here. Do not hold back anybody on this panel. And if you haven't played Psychonauts and you want to, there's your warning. So let's get into talking about this game story. Let's kick it off with Dave. What were your kind of thoughts going on here?
Yeah. So first of all, like just the kind of setup for it, like Raz runs away from the circus. He's not invited to the camp. He sneaks into the camp. And as soon as he gets there and, these camp counselors or they're almost like they feel like a branch of the military or something, like the Psychonauts. Like once the people there catch him, they're like, oh, wait, this kid's really strong. We gotta teach him or so. So like they basically let him in and they're like, we called your dad. He'll be here in a couple days. But until then, we'll like teach you some stuff or something. And then he like proves that they can't let him go. And then shit gets crazy. So then it's on Raz to kind of save the day, basically. Mm-hmm. I think this story setup is really cool. Like one of the consistent things that I'll come back to throughout this entire episode is just how creative this game is. And the setup of this kid at this summer camp for psychonauts in training and what a psychonaut actually is. You like go into people's minds. And this is one of the things that surprised me is how not dark this game actually ended up being, despite going into people's minds and like working with their traumas and stuff like that. Like it's like the nice cousin of Silent Hill 2, basically, where like it's like there's like dark stuff that happens, but it's all a comedy. This entire game is basically a comedy. But like the idea of what a psychonaut is and what that means for like what happens at this camp and what kind of trainings do these kids go through and stuff. It's all really, really creative. The story itself is like a cartoon type of story. So like it's not the deepest story out there, but along the way, there's like an attention to detail with the stuff in the levels and what the levels are made out of and the little short stories you play through as you go in through different people's minds and experience what they've experienced. I thought all of that was really, really entertaining. There's a lot to praise with the idea behind this. Like I said, it's like, what if Silent Hill 2 wasn't fucked up? What if it was like funny and like everything, even if you're dealing with people's personal like traumatic pasts and stuff, what if that was played for comedy instead? And I think it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like what if Silent Hill was a weird Cartoon Network show?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's Courage the Cowardly Dog, the game.
Yes. Return the slab.
So one of the things that you brought up too, it's like the story itself is not very complicated. It is rather straightforward when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it. There's not going to be a lot of twists that you don't see coming. It's like the villain is a villain for villain's sake. There is a twist on who the villain is, which is somewhat interesting. It's like the first level is kind of the same as the last level. Mm-hmm. It's the same guy, which doesn't make sense and makes sense at the same time. Whatever. But one thing that you said that I think really rings true is it feels very episodic. I think when you say it feels like a Saturday morning cartoon, each of the levels feels segmented off and provides its own story within the greater context of the game. So even though the overall arcing story itself isn't that interesting, the stories for the characters themselves within their worlds can be. Mm-hmm. Even when they're not necessarily all that interesting in and of themselves, the writing is so superfluous. Is it superfluous or superlative?
Superlative.
Which one? Superlative. See, I am stupid. If the writing is so superlative that it carries it. I'm sure we're going to talk about the Milkman stage, but like, is there really much of a plot in the Milkman stage? Is there, other than some conspiracy theorist dude? No, but the writing in there is excellent. And the setup is so good that it doesn't really matter. It's how you're carried through it. And that is really the defining moments for me when it comes to what Psychonauts is doing. How about yourself, Shane?
Oh, I'm an absolute sucker for this kind of writing. It's part of why I like Tim Schafer joints so much. I mean, I grew up on watching a shit ton of like Monty Python and stuff. So this is 100% my wheelhouse. Like anything just absolutely absurdist, I adore it. So this is perfect for me. So actually, going back real quick, one thing that Dave mentioned about the camp, it actually is a government facility, by the way. It's a secret government facility. So it's called Whispering Rock Psychic Summer Camp, but it really actually is a government facility for like training kids to become these psychonauts like we talked about. The interesting thing that I find about this is psychic powers are kind of like a known quantity in this universe. Like it's not like it's some weird, like really secret thing necessarily, because part of the reason that Raz runs away from his family is because they're actively suppressing him in using his psychic powers. They're like, we don't want that. Don't do that. That's weird. Don't do it. So that's an interesting thing. I also just really love the choice that this is set in sort of like a retro futuristic like version of the 1980s. So it lends a lot to the style, I think, which I really like. But anyway, that's kind of getting into more of the presentation pieces. But I think I tend to agree that generally the overarching plot is not anything mind blowing, right? Like even like you said, like even the twist is just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, it's one of the people at the place. Okay, great. That's not like crazy or revelatory or anything, but I think you guys nailed it right on the head, though, that what really makes this special, apart from the quality of just the writing itself, is all of the smaller sort of like subplots that you work throughout the game. Like the way that this game handles topics of, like mental health and trauma and healing and things like that are honestly like way more nuanced and way more in depth than you would expect from a video game in general, really, but also from a game that on the cover looks like this, right? You're looking at this and you're like I said, you're like, oh, it's a crazy, wacky cartoon game that probably looks like it's from Cartoon Network in the 2000s. Okay, I mean, that's fun, but it actually does a fantastic job of handling a lot of very potentially delicate topics in like a really meaningful and like introspective way. Like, and I think that's a big reason why a lot of people like the game as much as they do is really for like those pieces. Like when you're going in and, going through the minds of different characters and kind of working through their personal traumas and helping them to kind of get over those things and heal those things, and then facing your own traumas and things like that. Like it wasn't really something that a lot of games had done up until that point. And even then, I would argue that they maybe weren't handled super well. Like, listen, as much as I like Max Payne because bullet time, I'm not going to say that like it handles Max's like traumas particularly well. Like it presents them in a very flashy, cool way, but not in the way that this game handles them. So, yeah.
Well, like one thing that sticks out to me as an example of that is Gloria's level, where it's very much chalked up to laughs. But the more like it's about child abandonment and her mother killing herself. And these are very delicate topics. But it plays like the way they set everything up. It's kind of like you feel like you're laughing with the character and helping the character work their way through it, as opposed to just like be down in the doldrums and like feel bad all the time. like you still empathize with the character when you come out of their scenario. And I think that's what this game does very, very, very well across the board with almost every situation. But while you're in there, yes, it's very much a dark humor situation where like I was like laughing, but at the same time I was like, I don't really know why I'm laughing. It's like it's all played for humor. You know why you're laughing, but you kind of like, should I be like, because there's a lot of things going on here, but the game wants you to laugh. And especially in that scenario, when you're killing the enemies when they attack you, you get a laugh track. Like it's all played up. It's all hammed up. And that's like, those are some of the elements here that do make the writing and the storytelling so special.
And I think that's such like a tenuous line to walk to, right? Like you have to be so particular with that, because introducing that sort of humor into something that is that potentially delicate, like could come off as incredibly tone deaf at best or very offensive at worst. And I think this game somehow managed to pull that off pretty well.
Yeah, I think it's because it's like it is played like 100% for comedy, despite what the subject matter might be. And also, it's kind of one of those things where you're seeing these things through the eyes of a kid, because Raz is an actual child, and so is everybody else. So are all the other campers. Maybe that's one of those things where Raz can go through this scenario about one of the counselors who I forget the fine details, but was responsible for an orphanage of kids that burned down and stuff.
That was Milla's.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's not something where Raz or anyone has a heart to heart or anything about that. It's just how a kid doesn't know how to respond to a situation like that. And Raz is on a heroic mission here. And so it's just kind of in this matter of fact way within the comedy of the game. And I think that's why maybe they're able to walk that line really well, is because they're never really portraying any of this as serious. I mentioned Silent Hill 2 earlier. Silent Hill 2 goes the complete opposite direction, where nothing's fucking funny in that game for the most part.
Right.
But it's really interesting how they're coming at this same idea from completely opposite directions. Where Psychonauts is the kids' cartoon version of it. And it's for kids, and your main character's a kid. It feels like this game was made for 12-year-olds, and that's not in a pejorative way. It just feels like that's who the humor is directed toward and stuff like that.
I mean, I don't know what that says.
It works that way. Yeah.
I don't know what that says about my humor, but yeah.
No,
I mean,
that's the thing.
Yeah.
Good kids media appeals to everybody. Good kids media can appeal to adults too. That's just a sign of really well-made stuff.
True. That's true.
Absolutely. Yeah. You look at Grimm's fairy tales back in the day, they're extremely morbid. They were still for kids.
Yeah.
I mean, a little different, right? Different time period, obviously. But it's just because the content can be serious doesn't mean it can't be not meant to be ingested by someone of that age group, because kids are still smart, especially when you're an adolescent. Your brain is forming.
Knowing that now, I guess I didn't know this before, but knowing that this, at least creative lead, but surely some of the other people came from this point and click adventure background. Those are comedy games. Those are made for kids, or slightly older kids maybe, but those aren't made for 40-year-olds.
Debatable.
Doesn't mean a 40-year-old can be good at them in my case, but it's just interesting how we have these games. That pedigree starts to make this make a little bit more sense for me too. And one of the other things I wanted to mention about storytelling, which kind of reminds me of a point and click adventure, is how much dialogue and character storylines are happening in the background, completely optional stuff. In Psychonauts, you have this camp, and when you're not, there's a point of no return, kind of. You can always go back to the camp, but things are a little weird. But before that point, at any point, you can go talk to any of the kids or counselors in the camp. If you find an item, like an adventure gamey type of item, you can show it to anybody in the camp, and most of the time they'll have unique dialogue for it. And
that's cool.
Yeah, and the kids have their own side dramas and stuff like that. It's always happening in the background, and it really feels like how dialogue would change in a point and click adventure, depending on what chapter of the game you're in or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That type of detail you can start to see why like maybe there were clashes about like the direction that the game was taking and if they're trying to put in too many things. But the end product in something like Psychonauts is we have a camp full of, the kids don't feel like real kids, but they feel like a real group of kids where they have their own dramas. There are bullies. There are kids that are just kind of like hanging out, you know. There are loners within the group, and there's a bunch of dramas. There are kids with like boyfriends and girlfriends or whatever. And a lot of that stuff is completely missable unless you take the time to walk around the camp and talk to everybody at every new chance that you get, which is really, really cool. And kind of like sets this like back layer of making this camp feel like a real place.
Yeah.
Or a living place. Not real. Nothing about this feels really that real, but you know.
No. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with everything you said there, Dave. Not much more to add there. I do like the changing dialogues and how it evolves over time. Yeah. But two things I do want to bring up, just minor points that I want to pick on, more of the criticism take here. One is that you brought up you thought it would be darker. I kind of did want the game to go darker in some areas, especially after Milla's situation, when you're in her brain and there's the treasure chest and you can go in the treasure chest. That's a manifestation of the kids dying in the orphanage or in the house. And I thought when I saw that, like, oh, this game is going to get dark, because that is dark. That's a very dark element. I was like, I'm curious to see where it can go from there, but it doesn't really get darker from there. The closest is Oleander's, where his dad kills the bunnies that he loves for fun. That's about as close as it gets from there, but it doesn't really touch that. And that slightly disappointed me. Also, the ending is very rushed, or feels very rushed. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. Even if you want to, we can touch on this in the gameplay section with the meat circus that everyone loves. But what I found was the way that his dad just comes in and is like, hey, I'm here to help you. And then even mixed in with the gameplay, it feels like they just didn't know how to end it, or they had to end it before they wanted to. And I'm leaning more towards the former, just because you do spend so much time in the asylum with those three characters and their scenarios that by the time you get to the end, I'm not sure they knew the best way to put a bow on it. That's how it feels. Or again, or it just could have been rushed and they didn't know. But those are two criticisms I would levy against this game.
I would kind of expand that second point out into just saying this game has a really odd pace in general. The tutorial for this game is like 5 hours long. It's really long while they're teaching you how to do basic stuff and give you basic platforming abilities. And then you have like maybe 1 or 2 levels, and like you can go around the camp and talk to people, but then you hit that point where you get to the asylum, and then it feels like it's downhill toward the ending once you get into the asylum, unless you make the choice to go all the way back to camp and call the anglerfish to come take you and all this other stuff. It feels like it's a game of two halves, where it's like the first half, the camp section, is a tutorial. It just takes forever. And then the second half is all in this asylum. That's where some of like the more memorable levels take place, but it's still kind of, it feels kind of odd as you're going through it. Like I never had a good sense of like, where am I in this story until you start to get to a climax. You're like, okay, this feels like, unless this is a JRPG, this feels like it's going to be the final boss coming up here. And then for your first point, Chris, I wonder about Psychonauts 2, because I think people resonated more with Psychonauts 2 for gameplay especially, but also I think the plot affect people more in Psychonauts 2. So I wonder if they did go in more adult directions, more mature directions. I'm trying to think of an adjective that doesn't bring us to porn directions, but they didn't go in that direction. In a more risque. No, that's not the word either. Yeah, I wonder if they do go in a darker direction for Psychonauts 2.
If you make it Japanese and say they're all 1,000 years old, then you can go in that direction.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. The pacing is kind of strange, and that probably could go into the development. Because it seemed like when I read up on it, they wanted to have all this artistic freedom and give as much freedom as to the people who were designing the game as possible. So I wonder if they were like, oh, these are all good ideas. How do we make them work? How do we all put them in here?
I remember something from, it was either me watching the documentary or someone talking about the documentary where they were having a brainstorming session and people were like, everyone give me an idea, and they're all going into the game. And that's how it was like happening. It's like, that's not how this is supposed to work. Like that, we're going to run into issues if every idea goes into the game, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of it.
Could be. Shane, any criticisms at all here?
Not really anything that you guys haven't already touched on, actually. I don't really have too many things that I really want to criticize it for. I mean, I will say that given even being like in the, mid aughts at this point, it's still, especially if you're playing on PC, which I did back then without a controller, if you're playing keyboard and mouse, sometimes it can feel pretty janky, especially towards the end of the game. I think there's that. Other than
that's a great segue into gameplay. Let's get on it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Are you saying it feels janky? I think, yeah, this is where the biggest criticisms I think are going to be levied. It is janky. It is very janky. It feels like it's a platformer because if you look at when they started developing this 2001, platformers were still kind of in there. They were sunsetting a little bit. It's not like platformers had completely disappeared by 2005, but like they had come out of vogue. The main core concept of a platformer for being the main way of playing this game was probably a mistake, because it feels like they really want to emulate other platformers of the time. It feels like a game that wants to be a Banjo-Kazooie. It wants to be a Donkey Kong 64. It doesn't want to be Psychonauts. That's how it feels. And it feels like people who are trying their best to do that, as opposed to people that know how to do that. That's the feeling I got from playing Psychonauts, especially when it came to the collecting portion of it, because there are so many collectibles, whether it be figments or arrowheads or cobwebs or all these other things, and you have to backtrack in order to get some of these things too. So you just can't progress and get all these things naturally. There is definitely a collectathon element to it, and I don't think it's handled very well. I mean, I just generally think most collectathons don't handle it very well in general, but it felt very clumsy here and unfocused, and felt like they were doing it for the sake of doing it. Not to mention the platforming itself is floaty. How you can land on objects is it doesn't always feel consistent. Going from platform to platform isn't the best. And that really sticks its head out in the last level with the Meat Circus, where it expects precision platforming. And that's not this game.
Rail grinding and other such, some such.
Hey, Sonic did it. That was big in 2001. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good things I'm going to say about it, but in terms of the key way that you control Raz and the things that you do, I think it falls short more than it performs well.
I would say that, echoing what I said about the story, is I think if I'm thinking about why they made this into a platformer like this, it's because they wanted to turn somebody's psyche into a cool level to move around in. And the creative ideas behind that, I think, are universally great ideas for, we can make a level out of this person's history in the theater, and we're going to make this level with these changing sets. And then in a different level, we're going to make this into like this person's neighborhood conspiracy thing, and with all these government agents that he thinks are posing as construction workers, and we got to do these things to, like, stay out of their eye. And we have this other level where we have a combination of Raz's circus past with this other character's butcher shop childhood past, and they smash together to form the Meat Circus. And like, on paper, all of these are great ideas. I think they're really creative ideas. And the collectibles play into that, I think, because the figments especially are cool. Like, if you go through the level, collect the figments and just look at what they are, because there's so many different ones. Like,
that is cool.
It's cool to see all these different little things they turned into collectibles. And then you have like others that feel like they made a collectible because they thought the idea sounded cool to collect, quote, emotional baggage.
Yeah.
Quote, mental cobwebs, and all these other, okay, we're in somebody's brain. What are some ideas? We're making them all collectibles. The issue is that it's just a bad platformer. Like, it feels bad to play. The interactions with the environments are bad. They're unpredictable. I had a hell of a time figuring out, when I jump, am I actually going to grab this thing? Like these trapeze swings? Am I going to grab it or not? I had a really hard time with depth perception in this game. You know, I have to jump across a gap. Does this require a double jump? Does it require a double jump and glide? Does it require me to get on the ball and bounce over and glide? I had a really hard, often I would overshoot it or undershoot it. I suppose that's the other outcome there. But like, I had a really hard time in that it makes the meat circus so bad because it's all over a bottomless pit and you fucking die if you fall. So all of these little frustrations come to a head when you're platforming over bottomless pits. And so throughout the game, I would say I was like pretty irritated with the platforming, but I could deal with it because the stakes are usually pretty low. I mean, in some of the levels, like in the Milkman level, there's barely any platforming at all. It's an adventure game level. And again, like, creativity is cool. But when it becomes suddenly it's like, oh, it's the last level of a platformer, we need like really hard platforming challenges, then it's like, this fucking sucks. I don't know how this made it into the game type of stuff. They patched the meat circus to make it easier from the original version, and it still sucks. Like, I can imagine the way it used to be. I heard what it was. It sounds worse, but it's like an F- versus an F of a play experience, in my opinion. The last thing I'll say is that I think this game does a really bad job of leading you towards how you get on with like whatever that level's gimmick is. Because they all have really creative gimmicks, I think.
Extraordinarily, yeah.
But take that theater level, for example. The way you have to do it is you have to change the sets and interact with the sets in certain ways to create a way to get up to like the rafters in the theater. But they just kind of like throw you in there, and there's no real thing that really gave me an idea of what the game wanted from me. And a lot of times I get into a level and be like, this is a cool idea. I don't know what they want me to do in here, though. It was a pretty consistent problem in anything that wasn't a straight up, platforming run. It's just like irritation coming from all angles, other than conceptually, I love the ideas.
I want to talk about that after Shane gives his thoughts, because something you said there really put a thought into my mind appropriately about just somehow the levels are brought up. But Shane, go ahead. What are some of your thoughts on the gameplay here?
No, I think Dave did a pretty good job of sort of voicing my thoughts, generally speaking. The sense that I got, and I cannot say that I thought this back in 2012, because I'd be retrojecting a much better opinion, I think, onto a past self. But like, having revisited it now, the sense that I get is that this was a bunch of dudes, dude is universal. I'm a dude, you're a dude. So a bunch of dudes coming together and being like, man, we sure did make a lot of point and click games. We're not going to do that though. So what do we make? And they're like, well, we want to make a 3D game. And to Dave's point, like, we want to make these very creative spaces. Well, Super Mario 64 did really well. We should probably do something like I feel like it was them just kind of being like, how do we have an idea? What do we do with it? And it was like their first crack at, well, a 3D platformer sounds like a good idea because people have done those before. It kind of shows in the fact that it is not particularly tight as far as the controls are concerned. It's very hit or miss, quite literally. And as much as I recall enjoying some of the collectathon pieces, like I actually genuinely do like the Figments for the exact reasons that you guys mentioned. I think they're very creative, but I do believe that there's just a bit too much of it. I think we could have scaled some of that back and I would have been just fine. So I feel like that's kind of the take I have. I could be totally wrong. And I actually haven't watched any of the behind the scenes or documentary stuff or anything. So this might have already been covered and I'm just totally talking out of my ass, but just my own like kind of spidey sense about it is that it feels very much like that they were just like, I don't know, let's do this. And they kind of did the best that they could at it. And like I said, it kind of shows. But I don't ever think, with the exception of, well, we keep harping on it, but I think with the exception of the meat circus, because that's supremely frustrating, especially like while it is creative, right? That you have this character standing there throwing, knives at a spinning wheel, and you need to use the knives that get stuck in the wheel to progress by like swinging on them. In theory,
while on a timer.
Yeah, on a timer. In theory, that sounds cool. Very creative, In practice, it's fucking infuriating, because if you don't jump and get him to throw a knife at the right spot, you're probably going to fall to your death several times. So I think that area notwithstanding, I didn't personally feel like the jank was so much that it like overshadowed the rest of what the game does well. Mm-hmm. I do feel like it was a little bit of a letdown in the ending. Yeah. Not necessarily even from a narrative standpoint, just mostly, like I said, from the gameplay perspective, I think.
Yeah, it feels like they should have made more of a pure adventure game, especially going back to the Milkman stage. Mm-hmm. The Milkman stage is the one where I probably died the most on, because this is the funny part. I kept falling off the stage,
like bugging out.
It was so slippery. Or I put on clairvoyance and I'd back up to see myself, but I'd back off the stage. Or I thought I could hit a platform to go get some baggage or a figment or something, and then the geometry, because it's like this weird MC Escher kind of level design, wouldn't allow me to land on it, so I just go falling off the edge or whatever. I think I died like 3 or 4 times at that level. Just from that. It wasn't because of like getting killed by the CIA agents. Yeah, the G-men. Wasn't any of that. It was because of just me not being able to control Raz. But going back to a point that Dave made, this is where I'm going to start laying on the praise pretty thick. But I have to start out with the criticism. Yeah, these stages can be brilliant, but it will take you a while to understand why they are brilliant. Because the stage variances are there's so many different ways to play these stages, which I appreciate. That's awesome. There's a different approach to every single one, which is why I just go back to that. This should have been a pure adventure game with a different setup that kind of explains what you're supposed to do. Because the Napoleon level, I started out that level and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here. I'm just thrown into this like a Catan board of hexagonal strategy games. Like, what is this? Am I going to play a strategy game? And it's like, yes, you are, but you're going to have to platform around and get pieces and do all these things. But once you realize how it all's supposed to come together, I'm like, wow, this is fascinating. This is really cool. I hated learning it, but it was really cool once I got to it. And the bull level, don't remember the guy's name. I fumbled my way through that entire stage. I have no idea how I beat that level. No idea. I hated that one. Actually, I think I disliked that level more than the meat circus. Because I just found myself like trying to get really high and floating around the level until I made it to another card door, and then ta-da, I beat some battles and it was all over.
Yeah, it's almost like I agree with you. The meat circus was the most frustrating, but I never was lost on what I was supposed to do in the meat circus. You know what you're supposed to do in that. It's like, can you do it without fucking up too many times? I forgot the meat circus is also an escort mission in the worst fucking way. When you have to protect that bunny that's running around. It's just like a combination of so many terrible things. Like, again, it's one of those things where you're like, how did this get into the final game like this? Like, did you not test this on normal people to see how they would react to this? But it's like you said, or like I think you were like getting to with some of those, like I feel like these levels all started as like, this would be a really cool idea for a level. What if you were on this board game playing against this guy who's possessed by the spirit of Napoleon or whatever's going on in that story?
Yeah.
What if you were in like this Streets of Pamplona inspired level where it's like beautiful, like the level is beautiful with like the black and all like the neon colors and stuff. But you have this bull running down the main street, and if it hits you, it will take you all the way back to the beginning of the level or like the latest checkpoint that you were at. And I was like you, I had no fucking idea where I was supposed to be going in that level. I was just kind of wandering around. Sometimes in 3D platformers, like that is kind of what you do. It's more exploring than platforming. But like in that level, you also have the irritation of if I fall down or if I pop out at the wrong moment, that bull's going to pull me back and I'll have to get back to that point again. And so I feel like a lot of these levels started as it would be cool if we made a level like this. And then they made it into a playable section, but it, like, I don't want to say they didn't care about whether it was like actually enjoyable to play through, but there are a bunch of levels that are not enjoyable to play through for various reasons because they're all so different. But I think for me, a lot of my frustration with levels stemmed from not knowing what it wanted from me. Like it's ultimately, it's not a hard game, I don't think.
I don't think so either.
Once you figure out what you're supposed to do. The theater level was like, that I probably hated that level more than the meat circus because it was a combination of like too difficult for the type of level that I think it wanted to be. And I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. So it was just like, I'm just getting tossed around and I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Whereas like the meat circus fucking sucks, but at least I know where I'm supposed to go in the meat circus.
I actually liked the theater level. I like that one. I thought it was cute. It did take, I think I made it to the third act of it. And I was like, okay, now why am I not getting the stupid balloon?
Yeah.
I should be getting the balloon. Where's the balloon? But I do want to give a shout out now that I think the negativity's out of the way, unless Shane wants to pile on here. But
one more negative thing.
Okay,
real quick. I think the boss fights are universally pretty bad in this game. I hated the boss fights. This system of combat, and you do like a good amount of combat in this. I think it's fine when you're just bashing the little sensor dudes as they're running around. But once you get into like, I need to dodge out of the way of attacks, or I need to use my telekinesis to pick up this object, but not that object. Like stuff like that gets really bad, I think, in this game.
I would say the majority of the boss fights, but I can completely understand what you're saying. I like them. I think the problem with the boss fights wasn't mostly the concept of the boss fights. It was the execution.
Yeah. Concepts
I think
are great.
That's
this game.
I think that's the underlying theme.
Yeah.
But shout out all the way around for the lungfish level.
Ooh, I don't know, man. Can't go there with you.
You don't like that? You don't like that one?
The level itself is okay.
Gogdor?
The boss fight was so bad that I just like
it was harmless.
Nah, I like it. This is another thing. One of the other frustrations with the boss fights, and I promise I'll shut up soon, but like it was really hard for me to puzzle out how I'm supposed to damage a lot of bosses because they give you a bunch of tools and most of the time there's one specific way you're supposed to do it. And in that lungfish fight, I had a really hard time getting it to actually bite the things that it was supposed to bite.
Oh, that one sucks. Yeah. I'm talking in the city where you're Gogdor.
The lungfish level. Oh, yeah, that was fucking great. The one where you're a kaiju. That was awesome. I love that.
Oh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
I love that level too. So good.
The one before you go into the lungfish, no thank you.
Hit or miss. I liked the majority of it. I thought the boss battle was horrible. I can agree with you on that. But like the tutorial levels in the camp, when you're in the Psychonaut heads, I thought those were all good. Like the first level's good. Sasha's level's good. I thought Milla's level was a lot of fun. But yeah, you get into those later stages. There's another part of this game that I think I hated more than the meat circus, and is on the way up the tower.
Yeah, with those
that's
rats.
Not a level. Yeah.
Those rats and stuff.
Fuck those rats.
Yeah, not great.
No, but like there are levels in this that I think are really good.
Yeah.
I think they take advantage of this game's strengths. It's when they get more conceptually interesting that the flaws in the game's platforming mechanics rear their ugly head. And you've already been conditioned as a player to expect it to be more platforming. And I think that's where those concepts and mechanics clash so much that it can feel a bit alienating before you start to realize the genius that is there. It's just, it takes a minute. And you're right, conceptually great, but mechanics just, they're not meshing all the time. Shane, you haven't talked in a while. What you got?
Yeah, no, I mean, I tend to agree. As much as I really do like this game, I enjoy it in spite of the gameplay. And I will 100% be like the first one to admit that I absolutely used walkthroughs for several parts of this game for
Me
the
too.
reasons that you guys have said. Exactly. Because it's like,
Yeah.
It's a bummer because I love what the game wants to do. I really do. Like the concepts, the presentation, which we'll get to in a moment, in my opinion, is fantastic, like top notch. But it absolutely fucking sucks at guiding the player in any way. And again, it's one of those things. It's like another sort of balance because you don't want to go all the way down the like modern MMO track where it's just like, I have lit up the path for you to your next objective. And there's a giant arrow over the NPC's head like that. You might as well not play the game at that point. So like, that's too much. And then again, I have to imagine that this is coming from their roots, coming from a group of people that have been working on point and click adventure games, which are absolutely notorious for being just 100% the most obtuse shit you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that that is what is carrying over here, that they genuinely just really didn't know how from just a game design best practices perspective, if you want to put it that way, that I don't think they were really like in the know on like how should one guide a player through like a 3-dimensional space using like visual cues or, you know, putting hints here and there. And I just don't think it was there. And so they're really awesome at creating these spaces to exist in. Those are fantastic. But from like a gameplay perspective, it is often very frustrating, both from just a mechanics standpoint and then also just from a guidance standpoint of like, I genuinely have no fucking idea what this game expects me to do. It's one of the things that I hate a lot about boss fights in particular. And I'm not even talking about like this game necessarily or exclusively. This is just generally speaking. I fucking despise boss fights that have like very obscure mechanics that you would never figure out like naturally. And you have to sort of like suss out through trial and error or break down and just look up a guide. Like it's that kind of mindset of like, well, we did a cool thing, but fucking figure it out. I'm like, I hate that.
Can you go to the Milkman stage without telekinesis? Is that possible?
I don't know.
You might be able to.
You need it.
You might be able to go there, but there are certain portions in the game where you'll be progress gated by what psi level you're at because you need telekinesis or you need the fire ability or whatever. That's another gameplay thing where it's just like there's a couple things where it's like just like give me telekinesis in the story. Don't make me grind up this level to get it. Or like there's that part early in the game where like you have to go buy something, but it's like really fucking expensive. So you have to go buy
the dowsing rod.
Well, you have to use the dowsing rod for like a half hour to get enough money to buy the thing that you need. And it's like a total pacing breaker unless like the point is we want you to run around the camp some more.
I think you need that to get the cobweb collector or whatever it is.
Something like that.
Because later in the game, you get gateway locked by cobwebs that you need to collect.
Yeah. Yeah. So like there's a couple things like that where I just wonder why they did it that way. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me. You know, Shane talking about the adventure game history here just made me think of like my struggles with point and click adventures are because I'm not great at, I think the intended rhythm of like play, make progress until you're stuck, then put it down, come back tomorrow with fresh eyes, and maybe you'll see something you didn't see before. But that shit doesn't work in a platformer, I don't think. Like just not the same kind of game. So an action platformer at that, where it's like, I don't know how to fight this lungfish boss fight. So yeah, I'll come back tomorrow and see if I have a new idea. It's not like, you know, me and Shane playing the From Software games where like, I'll come back to fight a boss tomorrow if I get too mad to function. Then I'll come back tomorrow, but not if I like don't know how to do the fight in general, you know?
That has never happened, Dave. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, fine. I'll speak for myself.
I've
I'll
never
leave you out of this.
Almost chucked a controller across my house.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, good concepts, like basically all around, like the ideas for what are the boss fights and what are the levels and what is the way that you interact with the levels. They're all cool on paper. And then in execution, some of them end up being legitimately great. I will probably never stop walking around my house doing the G-Men voice lines from the Milkman level. Just like, I am a construction worker. I am a grieving widow. Like stuff like that. Very funny.
I am a grieving widow.
Like all those like creative things are so cool. And I don't think you could have those things without this being a platformer in a lot of cases. Like some of these levels I don't think would work if it was just a 3D adventure game. I think some of this needs to be a platformer, but it's just not a great one. So you run into issues.
Yeah.
I just think maybe it could have been de-emphasized. I think that's the thing. Like, and if we're talking, and I would have to double check this. I'm pretty sure it's them. It feels like, did Double Fine do Costume Quest? They did, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. So that's a perfect example, in my opinion, of like what this game like could have done. And I think for the most part still succeeded in what it wanted to do, because Costume Quest really isn't a platformer at all. It is pretty much a 3D sort of adventure-y type game. And I think it did it well. I enjoyed Costume Quest. And I think like, would something have been lost in that translation? Yeah. I mean, if I'm being honest, yes, because I think some of the verticality does lend a lot to the spaces that you sort of exist in the game. But I don't think that you would necessarily have to completely remove platforming elements from Psychonauts to improve it. I think if it was, like I said, greatly de-emphasized, you could still have that verticality and just not like, don't try to lean into, you know, like the Donkey Kong fucking Super Mario 64 angle of, you know, harder equals more precarious and precise platforming. In a game where like you really weren't able to nail the feel of the controls in the first place. Like you could still make a compelling game experience without those elements and still have some of that, you know, like verticality. I think they could have done it. But again,
Yeah, I agree.
I really do feel like this was just them being like, well, this is what other people have done successfully, and we feel like that's what fits for what we're trying to do. So let's just emulate those other things to the best of our ability.
Agreed. Well, let's move on to the presentation, because you brought up that we would be there in a minute. I think has been slightly more than a minute since you said we would be there. You know what, Shane? I don't think you've kicked off a section yet, and I'm tired of hearing you say you and Dave have covered most of what I want to say. So how about you start off with the presentation with the graphics?
It's fucking fantastic. I love it. It's yet another one of those cases where I strongly believe that an art style that you choose and stick to is going to age infinitely better than, you know, trying to go for realism. Not that this game could ever have worked if they tried to go for any sense of realism, but having a very identifiable art style does wonders for, you know, the longevity of your game in terms of, you know, the presentation. And I think that is 100% true here as well. Like even without the graphical upgrades that you get from, you know, the more modern versions of it on like Steam and what have you, man, I still think this game looks great. I love the art direction, but again, that's coming from somebody that was really, well, I say was, who the fuck am I kidding? Someone who is very much into that kind of thing. Like I fucking love Invader Zim and like that sort of very oddball presentation. Like I think one of the closest analogs that I could think of just off the top of my head in current day would be someone like Papa Meat on YouTube, like Meat Canyon, like that very, like, if you've ever seen his animations, very surrealist sort of takes on things with just like a hint of grotesquery. I feel like that sort of fits the bill here too, but in a little bit more of the like sort of Saturday morning cartoon direction than what he generally does. But Yeah, I'm man, I don't think I have a lot of criticism. I'm not gonna lie. Like I really adore how this game looks and the like design choices that it makes with the characters. They're just so fucking off the wall. Like this, if for nothing else, Schaefer joints ooze with personality, and this is no exception. I'll pause and let some other people talk, but also we'll touch on the music too, because I think that's pretty great also. But
Dave.
Yeah, no, I agree. Everything Shane said. It calls back to me to, and I will preface this by saying that I'm very out of touch with what kids' media is like these days, but it calls back to when I was a kid in the 90s and cartoon characters were ugly in an endearing way. And everybody in Psychonauts is ugly in an endearing way. Like there's people whose like their eyes are on like different latitudes on their face and shit. Like there's every single character is unique in their own ugly and fantastic way. They're all memorable for that reason. You'll never look at a character and be like, is that a Psychonauts character? Like you'll know based on how they look. It's just like Shane said, it's a commitment to this style and building it out like to the degree that they did. Like I think the only way someone's going to not like the way this game looks is if they just don't like that style of animation. But like, if you're open to it, or if you're even nostalgic for it, I think this is like a home run as far as visuals go. There's nothing that looks like Psychonauts. And that's anytime you get any kind of like artistic creation like that, where you look at that and you're like, that is unique. I can't think of anything that's like Psychonauts. That's cool. And that's I personally feel like I got to shout stuff like that out. So I really enjoyed basically everything about the way this game looks. And like, we talked so much about the creativity within the levels, but like the way that they look visually is fantastic too.
Yes.
So like, again, there's just an incredible level of creativity and artistry that's going into this game. And it's just like, it's that play experience that's holding it back from being like the best game I've ever played. And like, that is Psychonauts 2 is by all accounts a much better game to play with all of these other things that we've heaped praise on. And so like, there are a lot of people who are like, that is my favorite game, Psychonauts 2. Or it was like, it was my game of the year in the year it came out, because it lifted the game up to a point where it's like enjoyable to play. But we still have all these other things that we love about it, like the way that it looks. And so, yeah, just a home run as far as I'm concerned.
I'm going to deviate a little from the two of you, because this style subjectively is not really my style, which wouldn't make sense because I grew up with Ren and Stimpy like the two of you did. So is there nostalgia to it? Yeah, absolutely. With that being said, I mean, this is the style that the developers were going for, and it visually and how everything consistently makes sense, it is very good. Like, I'm not going to knock the graphics just because the style isn't like my style. I could still tolerate it. Again, consistency is key. The characters fit into the environments. I think the environments are very well crafted. I think the animations are solid. I don't really have any issues with the way that things are presented, because it does make sense within that world. Now, do I like the animation style? Again, no, but it's not so much of a turnoff that like it just irritates me. And I say that a lot. I know I'm going to get some hate for this, but with Final Fantasy IX, like I cannot stand playing Final Fantasy IX because the character designs upset me so much. It's like this irrational reticence for Final Fantasy IX.
Dude.
Like, you don't like it because of that? No, I don't like their Muppet design.
You
Get away from
like
me.
the weird chibis.
No.
Yeah, dude, I was afraid to play Dragon Quest V on DS because I thought it would look like Bravely Default, and I can't handle that. So I get it. Like, I'm with you.
I get it. Yeah. But I don't get that. I think it's the nostalgia angles, because when we were growing up, you had so many cartoons, so many Western developed cartoons that were like that for so long, even till today. Yeah, I mean, I can adjust to it. I can roll with it. And one thing I definitely do appreciate that Dave did bring up, and I'm happy that he did, is the environments, because the environments are great. They're extraordinary. Everything about the environments is just so well crafted. The attention to detail, like the gameplay themselves, because the environments are so varied and how they're presented, I think that makes it even more impressive. No two levels are exactly the same. They are incredibly different in the way that they are presented to the player, the way that the visual presentation executes that. Because in most 3D platformers, even if you go with like a Super Mario 64, like it's still designed in the way of a platformer would be designed. This is a 3D platformer where they are designed so differently that you can do different things, whether or not the execution is good. But I think it makes sense that they construct worlds to ultimately at some point force the player into what they want to do, like the Napoleon level and Gloria's level, even Milla's level, where you have to get used to using the ball. They work for what they're attempting to do eventually, if they don't initially, as we discussed, within the confines of player expectations. So I know kind of went to the gameplay, but like from the design element and how it's presented to the player and how successful they are in terms of what the player is looking at. Like the Milkman stage. I know the Milkman stage is a very celebrated stage, but it is for a reason. And why I'm going to bring it up again is, yeah, sometimes it strained my eyes and gave me a bit of a headache, but it's just so cool. I love that design element where a world twists around and you have things just kind of floating in a three-dimensional space, and how gravity can impact it differently depending on how you're facing other things and how you jump onto different objects. And how that looks, it looks like a cartoon version, again, of a Nicktoon from 1990s representing 1950 suburbia. And it's perfectly done. So the visual presentation, even, top notch. I'll just say that.
I think that I didn't think about this until just now, but it kind of clicked for me that between the gameplay and the presentation and like the environmental design, for me, this game exists kind of in the same space as Alice, for me personally.
Yes.
Which also is kind of funny because if you think about it, Alice came out in what, 01, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And
I think
this was like what, 05. So maybe not the ringing endorsement for this game in that it kind of still controls a lot like ass in the same way that Alice did, as much as I fucking adore Alice, but
it controls better than Alice.
It does. It does. Yes. 100%. I will not dispute that, but it's kind of interesting that even with that like 4 or 5 year like span in between, they do feel very similar in a lot of ways. I think they do a lot of the same things, like with the creative uses of the environments. And like you were talking about the Milkman thing with like things floating in like a space and stuff like that. And that just makes me think of the early parts of Alice where you're kind of in that vortex and the home starts like splitting into half and you have to do all the platforming and stuff. But anyway, side tangent.
They do really cool stuff in Psychonauts with scale too. So like you have the level where you're like a kaiju, and so you're blown up and it feels like you're blown up and you're smashing buildings and stuff like that. And then you have the opposite where you shrink down to go onto the board game in the Napoleon level, and you feel like you have the big sense of scale too, because you see like the normal size stuff is suddenly giant and all of that. So like the creativity with how things are presented to you with regards to scale too, not just visual design, not just level geometry, but more and more too. Like there's just creativity all the way down in this game.
Yes.
Even like you said, Chris, if you don't like personally love the way, like the style that they chose for how the characters look and stuff like that, the creativity in all aspects of presentation, there's still like so much in here that is just, you look at it and you're like, it's really cool that they were able to make this game, and get these ideas out there.
Absolutely. Let's get into the music. Well, not the music, just the sound. I don't know why it's just sound like music. This always feels more natural, I guess, for retro games, because that's normally the sound for retro games. But let's get with the sound direction. Dave kicked this one off. What was your thoughts on the sound?
I thought the music was a lot of fun. I will let Shane talk more about the music because I know he wanted to. I thought it was fun, so I'm probably going to agree with whatever Shane said. I think the voice acting in this game is tremendous. And I wanted to shout that out first and foremost. every voice actor is just playing into this cartoon vibe. The one that really got me thinking about that, it's not a big secret, but like the old guy who plays like multiple different camp counselor roles because his
Color.
Cruller. I keep wanting to say Cruller, like the donut, but yeah, Cruller.
You're just hungry.
Yes, correct. But yeah, he has like that very cartoony old man voice. He sounds like Arnold's grandpa from Hey Arnold and stuff like that. But everybody, like I was talking about the G-Men from the Milkman level, that voice performance is so funny. And I'm going to look this up. I feel like it's a really famous voice actor doing those lines. It jumped out of my head at some point. But I remember looking at that. I want to say it was Steve Bloom off the top of my head, but we'll have to fact check that and maybe have to cut this out. But those voice lines are fantastic. There's like hundreds of them and they're all funny. Little one-liners about I'm a construction worker, or like I am a grieving widow. Here is my bouquet of flowers. And just the delivery of them is so good. So the voice acting, Raz's voice actor is fantastic. All the camp counselors, they're really hamming it up in so many cases.
It is Steve Bloom.
There we go. Steve Bloom doing all those lines for the G-Men.
There's a lot of big names as part of the voice acting here. Tara Strong's in this game too.
Dude, Tara Strong's in everything.
Yes, that's true. She is in everything. They didn't cheap out on the voice acting.
No.
Shane.
I guess just to continue the thought with the voice acting. So Richard Stephen Horvitz is the one that voices Raz. The reason, like I said, that was such a draw for me to this game is just because of the other characters that he has voiced in the past that were pretty big, like in my life, as big as like a fucking cartoon could be, I guess. But for instance, he was Daggett in the Angry Beavers. I fucking loved the Angry Beavers.
Ooh,
yeah.
Good pull.
Back in the day, he was also Johnny 2x4 and Ed and Eddie. He was in quite a few. He was Alpha 5 in the Power Rangers.
Power Rangers.
Yeah. So for me, it's an instantly recognizable voice. It's one of those. And so him voicing this, and of course, Invader Zim. So that was like a big draw for me anyway. But yeah, the voice acting cast here is pretty stacked and it's pretty stellar across the board. The music, man, I love this soundtrack. It's, how you were saying like the graphical presentation just like drips with personality. The music is right there to match it, like beat for beat, no pun intended. Like it's every one of the tracks on this thing are just so identifiable, but like unique in their very own way. And they kind of run the gamut too, as far as, like musical inspiration goes. I mean, you go from, from swing music in some spaces to very like Mission Impossible style vibes to flamenco. It fucking goes places. It's impressive that they managed to still make that cohesive. And I can't, and I did this on purpose because I wanted to make sure. I went through prior to us talking about this and re-listened to snippets of all of the tracks on the soundtrack. And I'm going to be honest, I think this is one of those games where I can't really find one that I don't like. I mean, there's some that don't stand out quite as much, they're just sort of more like there. But I even think that that's kind of the minority. Like there's just so much personality involved in the backing tracks for the various levels of this game. And I think that's a really important thing to note is that none of, at least in my opinion, none of this would have worked as well as it does if they weren't 100% committed to the bit, if they weren't like, right, we're going fucking hard in the paint on what this game looks like. We're sticking to this aesthetic throughout. We're going balls fucking deep on what this music is going to sound like. Like, oh, there's a bull. You bet your ass this is going to be some Spanish flamenco guitar. Get fucked, son. Like they did not care. They just went in on it. And I appreciate that. They had a vision and they stuck with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you imagine with all those other like creative ideas? And then it's just like, just like kind of a generic action platformy orchestra video game soundtrack. Like, I don't think it would hit. I think a lot of it would fall flat. Like even the Meat Circus music is fantastic.
Yeah.
you may have negative associations with that song now after playing the game, but like that song's awesome. I'm with you, Shane. Like pretty much every level, every place that has like its own distinct music, it's often that kind of like fun type of thing. Like the Milkman conspiracy music, if I remember right, is pretty subdued, but it fits that level really well and sets that conspiracy vibe really well.
Yeah. Music, by the way, was composed by Peter McConnell. And if you look over his works, his soundtracks, his discography, whatever you want to call it, pretty much if there was a Lucas Arts game, he was involved with it in one way or another. This includes like the Star Wars games. Just he has a huge discography to include the Sly Cooper series as well. Did the music for that, a couple Sony games. So he has a huge backlog of things he's worked with. I will start with the voice acting because I think that's the real standout in this game. I think that the voice acting performances, and because the writing is so good as well. So when you have the two meshed together, it really makes those voice acting performances stand out, especially because they didn't cheap out on the voice acting. As we mentioned, you have some very successful, notable voice actors that are participating in Psychonauts and providing their talents. And it was worth it. It brought this game to life. It brought the characters to life. It made everything funnier because their delivery was so strong. It carries the game. I really think the voice acting, outside of the very creativity, and a lot of the creativity is there. If you don't have the voice actors delivering in the way that they do, if this was all text, I don't think people would remember this game as well as people remember it. I think that like it's essential to play this game with voice acting. You have to play with voice acting. It just makes it so strong. The music, I think the last part of what was said there was what I really took away from it. I wouldn't call it like excellent music. I'm not coming away from it wanting to listen to it in my car, or I'm humming it, or it's not catchy, but it is very appropriate. It's not, I don't want to like diminish it because it is a very good soundtrack. It's just not like something I'm being like, oh, one of the best soundtracks of all time. That's how I feel about it. And like going back to that subduedness for the Milkman level, over time, I was like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. I need something different.
It's a long
I'm very,
level.
very, very tired of this. It's a long level. But like when you get in situations like that, I think that there does need to be a little bit of a change up in terms of the audio that you are hearing. As funny as it is, the voice bits that you're getting all through that. And there are some times I'm just like, I'm listening to this music too much. I got tired of the camp music too. I heard it a little too much, and it's very, again, Saturday morning cartoonish. That's not a knock. It's just what it is. It's appropriate through and through. It's just, do I walk away from this thinking, oh my God, the music is so good? I don't. I just think it's appropriate. It's 100% appropriate. And that's not one of those, oh, I just didn't notice it, I guess it's good. No, I did notice it. It's just, I thought it was fine. I don't think it was double fine, but I think it was fine.
Been saving that one, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it is, I guess it technically is Double Fine. This is the guy who made music for pretty much all of Double Fine's games. So it's very much a Double Fine feeling. It has its own personality for sure. But I mean, if I was going to give an overall grade to the sound direction as a whole, I mean, it's stellar. Even your attacks, the way the enemies react to you, all the sounds in general when things explode, and like everything's good. Like it's stellar sound design through and through.
The little like sensor guys just going, no.
Now, yeah.
That stuff's great. I love it. You're right. I think the voice acting does carry a bit more than I was like thinking about it, because like there's a lot of nuance to the delivery of the lines, which is not something you always associate with like quote Saturday morning cartoons, especially with Raz. Like Raz's deliveries are very witty in a lot of cases, and he's not just like a screaming kid or something like that. But on the other end, you have Oleander, the drill sergeant, screaming at these kids about how they're all gonna die. And then it like, I love like a beginning scene, it like pans to, you don't know who he's talking to yet. It's like a bunch of kids crying and stuff. Like stuff like that really sells it. And the performances across the board really work.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I guess at this point, it's time to move on to our Patreon pontifications. What are the Patreon pontifications, you may ask? I feel like I'm saying patron weird. It's where you go over to our Discord or Patreon and you let us know your thoughts about the upcoming game that we post there. And if you respond, we will discuss it here on this show. And we're going to start off with Matt, aka Stormageddon, from the quotation mark fun unquotation mark and games podcast, as well as the Reignite podcast. And Matt says, this is the game that made me fall in love with Tim Schafer and Double Fine. I love this world, its characters, and the writing. The design and world building is top notch. Unfortunately, the platforming in some of the levels has aged like milk. Fuck the meat circus. That is something the sequel will fix and makes it the superior game of the two, but I still love the first one despite its flaws. Also, Raz's victory dance lives rent-free in my head.
Love it.
Those little hands up.
Yeah.
Like that.
All right. Next, we have Keith Gasper of the Main Quest podcast, who tells us you gotta be a psycho to not enjoy this game. Sorry, I haven't played it. Great. Thank you, Keith. Your contributions are always appreciated.
Lyle says, I've heard really good things about this game from others, and I heard things about it from you. Maybe things that will help me decide if I want to play it. Smooches.
I love how you add smooches all the time.
Yeah,
Thank you,
good.
Lyle. It's heavily encouraged. Next is Omi. And Omi says, I guess I'm that psycho who did not like it, in response to Keith there. And he said that he did play it.
Well, okay then.
So, yeah, see, there you go, Keith.
I like our little meta plot evolving in the
Back and
in the
forth.
pontifications here. All right, and next up we have Lefko of the Afterglow podcast, who says, a fantastic and unique platformer. I played it on the Xbox and thought it was a cool take on a platformer in a time where games got stuck in a rut of doing the same thing, just in a different skin. Sadly, after I beat it, I moved on to other games. Knights of the Old Republic and Halo 2 ate so much of my time when I had the original Xbox, and never gave it another playthrough. That's something I should probably rectify soon. Well, thank you, Lefko.
And finally, we have Alt. Alt says, Psychonauts feels one part Pixar charm and one part Tim Burton, all tied up in a 3D action platformer package. I haven't finished the first game, but I have beaten the second one, and this is one of those games where you ask yourself, why don't we get weird and zany games like this anymore? Well, we all know that answer in our hearts, sadly, greed. This game reminds me of the times I would stay up late, in quotes, and get to watch all the naughty, in quotes, cartoons like Ren and Stimpy or something equivalent. I think this is one of those series that deserves a lot more recognition than it has, especially Psychonauts 2, which features a very long documentary series beside it called Psych Odyssey. Honestly, I love Tim Schafer for allowing this inside view. And that documentary series is really good. NoClip does really great work in the documentary space, but I don't think there's anything out there that gives you as close a look at game development than Psych Odyssey, like every part of game development.
I'll have to check that out. All right. Thank you to all of our patrons to providing your patron pontifications. But now it is time to discuss whether or not we think this game holds up today. And as we are wont to do, myself and Shane will give our opinions on whether or not the game will hold up, and then allow our guests to have the final word. I will go first here, and I will say mostly, this is because you can't ignore I don't think you can ignore the platforming elements, which makes it very difficult to just outright say yes. This is something that I think if you can, and it's probably easier now than it was in 2005, find someone who loves this game and watch them play it. Because then you don't have to deal with the platforming. Because like going through the writing that you'll experience, the narrative delivery, the voice acting, the various environments, like that's all entertaining. But there's just sometimes that platforming is just going to be such a stick in your butt that you're going to be like, why am I could be playing a much better platformer right now if I wanted to do that. but you probably won't because, again, like the personality is so endearing. The way the characters are so endearing that you'll probably stick with it. So I'm going to give it a yes, but with reservations. Understand that there are parts that you are not going to be having fun. You could say that about a lot of games, though, but you'll probably notice its flaws and they'll stick out more than a lot of other games in its genre. But there is so much more that covers up for it that it's going to be forgiven in the long run. So a yes with caveats. Shane?
Oh, man. This is rough for me because I genuinely adore this game, but man, I don't know. Some of the gameplay is just real rough. Honestly, your recommendation is not that bad. Like if you want to experience it, like sit and watch someone who really enjoys it play it. I actually feel like that's a really great way to do it. Or, I mean, I guess watch a long play or something if you really don't, if you can't be fucked to try to like deal with the janky platforming. But clearly this is subjective and clearly I am very biased. But I think if you give it a chance, I would make the argument that I think all of the other stellar aspects of the game will win out over the admittedly lackluster gameplay. I think that there's a lot of charm. There's a lot of personality. The writing, like we said, is fantastic. The voice acting is top notch. There's so much going for the game that it really is a shame that mechanically it's not where we would want it to be. So that's a lot to say that I think it's like a lukewarm yes at best. If you don't even want to mess with it, just watch someone play it or watch a playthrough, what have you, because I think like experiencing the story is important because that really is sort of like the selling point really here. But you know what? If you're up for a little bit of a challenge, you don't mind a little bit of frustration, I do still genuinely think that it really is an experience that is quite unlike most others.
All right, Dave.
Yeah, there's a lot of thoughts with this one. Specifically, so like the phrase "does it hold up?" I've actually been thinking about this since I started playing Psychonauts because were I to say that it holds up or doesn't would kind of imply that the platforming was ever good. And it's not, even by the standards of 2005. Like we had great 3D platformers in 2005 and before. It's just not a good platformer. And by extension, I don't think it's a good play experience. I said, even in the parts that I enjoyed, even in the levels that I thought was good, I had just like a low constant irritation, just the way it feels to play this game. But in spite of that, I think I would give it a pretty hearty recommendation for people to try out. And it's kind of along the lines of what Alt said in the pontification, where everyone is saying that you want games like this. We say this all the time. I'm using the royal we, it might just be me, but like, I think a lot of us who do podcasts will loudly say that we like when people take big risks, and we would rather have a flawed game that takes risks than a safe game that doesn't. And in this case, in Psychonauts, we got a game where they took a bunch of risks. It didn't all work, and it results in this very flawed product, this very flawed like final piece here. But I still think that people should give it a try if you value artistic swings like this. And honestly, I think that anyone listening at almost 2 hours in the podcast here probably does value that a little bit. If you want the best of the best 3D platforming, and you feel like most 3D platformers have good aesthetics, and you want good movement with great expression and things like that, stay the fuck away from Psychonauts, in my opinion. But I think that there is, like Shane said, and like you've said too, Chris, the other things that are good in Psychonauts are still good enough that I think that I do recommend it to a lot of people, again, with the caveat that I was pretty irritated at the act of actually playing the game. But I don't know. I can find, the three of us, and I think a lot of your listeners can find value in things that aren't great play experiences because that's not all games have to offer. I think this is one of those games that might bring up, I kind of hate it when people say like, I don't think this should have been a game. I think it should have been something else because the play experience isn't great. Like, did this need to be a game? And I think that that's a pretty stupid thing to ask in general. For most things, they could have made something else. They chose to make it a game. And I think it's that interactive way of going through these levels where I don't think I would recommend someone watch a Let's Play because you would just, maybe I'm projecting my own experience with Let's Plays, but I cannot get stuck into a Let's Play and like really get immersed in a world if I'm watching it on YouTube and then I have an ad coming up in 2 minutes or some shit, you know? So I think that people should check this out. I don't think it's a great game, but I think that it's a great creative swing that was taken, and there's value in that too. There's value in experiencing that.
All right, I am adjusting my statement to also include, maybe go watch Let's Play as long as you're not a peasant and you have YouTube Premium. There you go.
Called out in 4K.
Dave's throwing cold shoulders at us.
Yeah, no, I should have YouTube Premium. Yeah, Lord knows I watch enough YouTube. It would probably pay for itself, but you know.
Yeah, now that ad block doesn't work. Bastards.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we gave we're essentially giving Psychonauts a rousing we guess it holds up today.
It's a collective, give it a try. You might not like it, you know, that kind of thing.
You'll like everything about it except playing it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, that concludes this episode. Thank you so much, Dave, for stopping by. It's been a great time. Love your point of view. Love your perspective on Psychonauts today. You brought up a lot of good points. Spoke very well, as you are wont to do. I used that again. I love it. Where can the people find you making great points and having tremendous perspective on other video games?
Well, first of all, thank you. Means a lot coming from you. Yeah, Tales from the Backlog is the place. It is a weekly show. Every week is a different game on the show. I do the deep dive treatment similar to what we've done here today, with the exception that my show is no spoiler for a while. So you can listen to us kind of give an overview of story things, top level thoughts about the story, and then we'll kind of stop talking about that. We'll talk about everything else. And then there's a spoiler break where you can jump out if you don't want to be spoiled. So every episode is like that. It makes some episodes uncomfortable to record, such as the one that Chris and I did about Spec Ops: The Line, or the one that Chris and Shane and I did about Signalis. Some games are tough to talk about, but we do it that way because I think that there's value in hearing people talk about a game that you don't want to be spoiled on. We can have those conversations. And so that's what my show is all about. And so, like I said, Chris has been on the show, I like 3 or 4 times now. Shane's been on the show one time before. Chris, you and I we had that roundtable discussion about, criticizing and evaluating retro games in the modern age, which went in a bunch of different directions. I thought that was a fun chat. What else? I can't remember. You've been on too many times for me to remember now. You can't remember the ones I've done on your show. I'm having trouble doing the same for you.
Keep in mind, my brain is Swiss cheese, so I have a problem remembering what I eat for breakfast most days.
All of our brains are Swiss cheese now. But I do remember that, Chris and Shane, we had the rare double feature for the Signalis episode, which, by the way, consistently one of the most popular episodes of my show. People love hearing breakdowns of Signalis, and I think we did a good job on that show.
I think we did, yeah. I had a great time.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. I remember us just hardcore nerding out about like the lore in that one.
Oh yeah.
Theory crafting to all hell.
Yeah.
It was a great time.
Yep. So that's Tales from the Backlog, and it's a weekly show, and I do some retro games, I do some brand new games, everything in between. Yeah, everywhere where you listen to podcasts. And then if you like to do podcasts via YouTube, there's a video version of the show now too on YouTube.
Awesome. I have to check out the video version. I can see your brilliant face.
That's right.
Showing up, even though you cut your hair. All right. But that's Tales from the Backlog. Go check it out. Great friend of the show. Always great to work with Dave. Thank you once again for stopping by. But now it's our turn to pitch our product that people have already come to listen to for all of you. Shane, how about you go ahead and shill us up?
Oh, hot damn. Well, if you are already here, which you are, because you're hearing me say this right now, unless you're existing in some quantum state, in which case I don't know what to tell you at this point. But hey, we're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoyed this discussion. And if you enjoyed it enough that you're like, man, what else do these fine gentlemen have to offer? Well, let me tell you, so much. There's so much. We're literally giving it away. We don't know how to hold all of this content. It's our cups runneth over. And so I encourage you to check out our linked tree because it's all conveniently placed in one spot. We did that just for you. Go over to linktr.ee/retrohangover. Check out the show feed itself. You can also pop on over to Patreon or the merch store should you wish to support the show in that way. If you do, by the way, at least with Patreon, you get access to even more stuff. There's so much stuff, as if there wasn't enough content to consume in the world. We are just exacerbating the problem, and we just don't care. We don't give a fuck. We're just putting all the things out there, and you deal. It's your problem now, really, is what it is.
No fucks given.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, if you go to the merch store, I mean, you're getting stuff, so there's that at least. You get a sweet t-shirt or something, but we've also got our YouTube and our Twitch channels. You can check those out as well. Let's see, socials that we occasionally use. I don't even remember the last time we posted something, but it's there.
Once a week.
So there you go. Go to Shitter and see something that's not complete garbage. Maybe. I don't know.
Blue Sky too.
I don't monitor what Chris tweets, so it could be anything.
Game on.
Banhammer incoming. I love that. But anyway, so that's all our stuff. Go check it out over there if you would be so kind. We would thank you forever and always. Chris, what else would you like to add to my rambling spiel here?
Yeah, sure. I'm glad you brought up the Patreon really quick there and all the content that is there, because the King of Games 1999 is going on over the Patreon currently, which does include Dave Jackson, our guest today. It provides hosting duties and does a fantastic job, if I do say so myself. So if you are a patron, you can listen to the King of Games 1999 as it is going through 24 episodes this season, which means it will be 24 weeks since episode 1 debuts until it gets onto the main feed. So yeah, it's a long time. So if you want to keep up with everybody else and not hear people say games not getting remade much later, you go check that out now because it's a great time. And that's all I have on that aspect. Yeah, go check us out on Twitch, and I don't know, we have uncomfortable conversations there every week. We get into social commentary and I look awkward while discussing it. It's a great time. So see you there on Twitch.
All right. Well, with all of that now having been said, until next time.
Play with your I want to roll around in your mind with my balls and party joysticks.
Shane here with a quick message. The one rule Chris and I have always gone by regarding advertisements is this. It has to be something we use and can personally vouch for. If you know me, you know I love coffee. And Bones Coffee Company has been my go-to for home brewing for quite some time now. Their small batch beans come in an impressive variety of flavors like Mint Invaders from Chocolate Space, or Electric Unicorn, which I swear tastes exactly like Fruity Pebbles. And the best part? No added sugar or calories involved, just natural flavors infused right into the beans themselves. Build your own sample pack of 5 4-ounce bags to find out which flavors speak to you, or jump in head first with full 12-ounce bags. They've even got K-Cups. Step up your homebrew game with Bones Coffee by visiting bit.ly/RHPBones. That's bit.ly/RHPBONES.